Good morning. I'm Floyd Turner, past president of the Governor Joseph Hiester Chapter, Sons of the American Revolution. Thank you very much for joining us here this morning for this relatively brief but important ceremony. Reverend Roth will now give the invocation.
Washington's headquarters during the winter of 1777 were in the home of Isaac Potts, son of John Potts, founder of Pottstown. Isaac Potts erected an iron forge in a valley that we call Valley Forge. The prayer at Valley Forge by Arnold Freiberg is one of the best-known paintings of the American Revolution. It depicts George Washington at Valley Forge in prayer on his knees. There is actually an episode where Isaac Potts is quoted to have come across this picture. It was about a quarter of a mile off from the place we were riding as it happened. There laid the army of Washington. It was a most distressing time of the war. All were about for giving up the ship, but that great good man. From in that woods I heard a plaintive sound as a man in prayer. I tied my horse to a sapling and went quietly into the woods, and to my astonishment, I saw the great George Washington on his knees, alone, with his sword on his side, his cocked hat on the other. He was at prayer to the gods of the armies, beseeching to interpose with his divine aid as it was in a crisis and the cause of the country. It was, in George Washington's estimation, the cause of all of humanity and of the world. Such a prayer, said Isaac Potts, I never heard coming from any man's lips before. I left him alone in prayer. I went home and I told my wife, I saw a sight and heard today something I've never seen or heard before, and just related to her what I had seen and heard and observed. We never thought a man could be both a soldier and a Christian, but there he was, the best in all the world, George Washington. She also was astonished. We together at that moment deduced it was the cause of God that America could prevail. Let this be our invocation.
I ask everyone to please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The Sons of the American Revolution is a historical, educational, and patriotic organization that was officially organized in 1889 and was chartered by an act of Congress on June 6, 1906. All of our members are able to prove their lineage from an ancestor who supported the war for American independence. These ancestors include those persons who fought in the military or militia, provided supplies to the American cause, and served in political bodies supporting the revolution, or signed oaths of support or similar acts. We perpetuate their memory of those who achieved the independence of the American people. We believe that their stories are universal ones of man's eternal struggle against tyranny and are still relevant and should inspire and strengthen each succeeding generation as it is called upon to defend our freedoms. We are gathered here today freely and of our own accord. We are not compelled to be here, nor do we fear this gathering, or the open expression of our faith. This great country was founded on the principles of freedom and liberty and the belief that we, the people, possess the wisdom to choose our leaders and to chart our own course. That if we were provided with the free flow of information, that power that guides us would lead us to the correct path. We're free to practice our chosen religion without fear or intimidation. We can vote for whomever our conscience and intellect determines to be the best candidate. We move freely from Maine to California without the need for government approval, and we are free to pursue our livelihood in whatever field of endeavor our abilities and interests lead us. These freedoms and others have been secured for us by the service and sacrifice of our ancestors. Securing our freedom required rebellion, but it wasn't fighting for fighting's sake. It was grounded in principle and purpose and led by extraordinary men of honor and vision. But victory would have been impossible without the many thousands that served in the Continental Army and Navy and the militias and the countless people that provided the support necessary to maintain the military. Their names and deeds must be remembered and honored also. At this time, I'm honored to introduce the president of the Governor Joseph Hiester Chapter, Mr. Robert Hillegas.
Thank you. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the pastor and the congregation for allowing us to be here on this Allegiance Sunday. It's an honor to honor the memory of not only my ancestors, but for all the soldiers that are buried here and around for the sacrifice of giving us a new nation, giving us freedoms, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and all the things that we enjoy. So thank you very much for allowing us to be here and to represent our chapter and the SAR.
Also, I'm honored to introduce to you one of our state officers. He is the second vice president of the Pennsylvania Society of the Sons of the American Revolution. He also happens to be a past president of the Governor Joseph Hiester Chapter. Please welcome Mr. Eric Troutman.
As the second vice president of PASAR, I'm honored to be here. I bring you greetings from the State Society. It's almost like a feeling of awe when you get to stand in what I call an old cemetery like this. This is hallowed ground. I'm honored to be here, and I'm just honored to be here. That's all I can say. Thank you for all attending. This is what the SAR is all about, to get people to come out and remember what our ancestors really did. We wouldn't be able to do anything if they really stuck their neck out 200 some years ago, fighting the biggest, strongest country in the world so we could have freedom. And we would never have what we have today if they wouldn't have done what they did back then. Thank you very much for attending.
At this time, I would like to introduce Mr. Kim Jacobs, and Kim did a lot to help facilitate this event here for us, so we appreciate that very greatly. Kim Jacobs.
Thank you. Welcome on behalf of New Goshenhoppen United Church of Christ. We're very excited to have everyone here present at the ceremony here at the oldest cemetery on the church's campus. I would like to thank Governor Joseph Hiester Chapter, Sons of the American Revolution, for sponsoring this dedication ceremony and honoring the 37 men who were served in the Revolutionary War and are buried here on these grounds. We also want to include Henry Borderman, who was buried in a small family cemetery just a few miles away. I also would like to thank the Joint Veteran Council for being part of this ceremony. That includes the American Legion Procurement Post 184, Veterans of Foreign War, number 5954, Marine Corps League Detachment 568, and the church's Friendship Committee, who will be serving the light refreshments after the ceremony. I also would like to thank Bugles across America, Timothy Gilbertlees, who's our bugler today. Just a short history here. At New Goshenhoppen United Church of Christ, we take great pride in our long history of service to the people of this area. These grounds have been used for worship by many of the early German settlers. In 1727, October 12th is our first recorded date in the history of our congregation when Reverend George Michael Weiss celebrated the Lord's Supper. 3 buildings have been utilized by this congregation throughout its long history. In 1739, the first church of logs was built, which we know very little about. The outstanding event of the pastors of Reverend John Theobald Faber Sr. was the building of a stone church, for which the cornerstone which was laid in 1769. The church was completed in 1770. The cornerstone is now on the corner of the wall up here on my right in the front of the church. The archstone of this church is also located in the stone wall surrounding the second cemetery on the right of me also. There is a number of other items which are a part of the second church that may be seen in our third church and the building that's behind me right now, which was built in 1857 at a cost of $18,158.09. In front of the church to our left are 2 graves. One is Reverend George Michael Weiss, our first pastor, who was ordained in Germany, came over here on a boat to Philadelphia, and then slowly made his way up the Perkins Valley here to be pastor of the New Goshenhoppen United Church. Well, actually, it was the Reformed Church, German Reformed Church at that time, who was also buried under the pulpit. The second is Reverend George Theobald Faber Sr., father and son, Reverend John Theobald Faber Jr., who originally were buried under the chancel of the 1769 church. Later, John Theobald Faber Jr. Was later moved alongside of his wife here in this cemetery. One of the interesting stories of this father and son is that they served at the church as pastors. They then moved to Lancaster for a period of time. They came back to New Goshenhoppen Church, and then both collapsed at the pulpit. I'd just like to mention that in October of this year, our church will be celebrating its 285th anniversary of the service of the congregation in the community of the Valley.
Thank you, Kim. And last but certainly not least, I'm honored to introduce Mr. Larry Roeder, who will give us a little history of the area, I believe.
Thank you. On the eve of the 236th anniversary of our nation's Declaration of Independence, I would like to thank the Governor Joseph Hiester Chapter of Pennsylvania's Sons of the American Revolution for honoring our Revolutionary War participants who sleep here and nearby. Many local residents never knew about their courage and their sacrifices, whether they were regular Army or members of the Pennsylvania militia. Memories have long faded and history failed to record their deeds and contributions to the efforts in founding a new nation. Among the weathered stones and faded names are patriots. Most of the citizen soldiers buried here were of German descent, 18th century immigrants or sons of immigrants who came to Penn's Woods to escape the religious prosecution and 30 Years' War, which was part of a 50-year struggle between the Austrian Habsburgs and German princes for the European balance of power. As early as 1682, William Penn traveled through Germany, inviting members of persecuted religious groups to come to his colony where he promised freedom of worship. Did you know that it was common for General George Washington to pick German Americans who only spoke their native dialect as personal guards because they were fiercely loyal and he could speak freely around them? The Revolutionary War effort had several local connections. John, the father of Governor Joseph Hiester, was born and raised at the nearby Daniel Hiester homestead, located near the bottom of 70town Hill in Upper Salford Township. John, Joseph's father, entered the war as a colonel and later was promoted to brigadier general. In 1777, the battalion commander for most of the soldiers from this area was Colonel Frederick Andes, the same Andes who lived on the farm in nearby Upper Frederick Township, which is the home of the Goshenhoppen Folk Festival every year. So now when you go visit the Folk Festival and the Andes house, it has a little bit of new meaning for you. His 6th Battalion included volunteers from Douglas, Frederick, Limerick, Marlborough, New Hanover, Perkiomen, Salford, and Upper Hanover Townships. Some of you may have seen the sign in front of a beautifully restored home in Garyville Pike in Marlborough Township that bears the image of a Revolutionary War soldier in the name Andreas Reed. Andreas Reed served as a captain in the 7th Company in Colonel Andes' battalion. Captain of the 3rd Company assigned to Upper Hanover Township was Captain Peter Sauer. A glance at historical records show that many of the citizen soldiers buried here were baptized and married in this church. They were church officials and loyal church members. A look at the local tax records show most of the citizen soldiers were farmers. A small number were millers or merchants. These men left their farms and businesses when duty called to serve in the Trenton, to Brandywine, the Battle of Paoli, and the Battle of Germantown. If you search for it, you will find stories written of their calls to actions and their travels from here to their locations. You won't find local history taught in most school. It is a subject that you must have the desire to seek out yourself. When I searched and found that my ancestors were part of the founding of these great United States, Johannes Roeder, buried right to my left, I couldn't have been prouder. I urge you to learn the history of the region you call home and share it with others. Be proud this day as we honor this Allegiance Sunday and grave dedication ceremony. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. I would like to read a few paragraphs from 2 of our founding fathers to remind everyone why our patriot ancestors fought for independence. First are the words of Patrick Henry as he addressed the Virginia House of Burgesses in St. John's Church in Richmond on March 23rd, 1775, on the subject of Britain's treatment of the colonies and the increasing hostility towards them. It's worth noting that he gave this speech just about 4 weeks before the battles of Lexington and Concord, and it was in response to others in the House of Burgesses who advocated reconciliation and appeasement. And I should also qualify this by saying I'm no Patrick Henry, but I will try to do this justice. Sir, we have done everything that could be done to avert the storm which is now coming on. We have petitioned, we have remonstrated, we have supplicated. We have prostrated ourselves before the throne and have implored its interposition to arrest the tyrannical hands of the ministry and parliament. Our petitions have been slighted. Our remonstrances have produced additional violence and insult. Our supplications have been disregarded, and we have been spurned with contempt from the foot of the throne. It is in vain, sir, to extenuate the matter. Gentlemen may cry peace, peace, but there is no peace. The war is actually begun. The next gale that sweeps from the north will bring to our ears the clash of resounding arms. Our brethren are already in the field. Why stand we here idle? What is it that gentlemen wish? What would they have? Is life so dear or peace so sweet as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery? Forbid it, Almighty God. I know not what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty or give me death. We must also recall the words of Thomas Jefferson that are contained in the Declaration of Independence, adopted by Continental Congress on July 4th, 1776. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundations on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light or transient causes. And accordingly, all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer, while evils are sufferable, than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. The following patriots buried here answered the call and helped forge our nation. Johannes Barrett, Adam Boser, Philip Christman, Johann George Fisher, Johannes Fisher, Johannes Gallman, Johannes Gary, Ulrich Grieber, Andreas Grieber, Leonard Griesmer, Conrad Hilligus, Friedrich Hilligus, George Adam Hilligus, George Peter Hilligus, Andreas Hoffman, Jacob Huber, Andreas Jung, Conrad Netz, George Kolb, Joseph Kolb, Philip Lahr, George Mack, Andreas Maurer, Heinrich Pennybacker, Johann Andreas Reith, Johannes Roeder, Johannes Schiefer, Heinrich Schlicker, David Schultz, Christian Stauffer, Johann George Steinman, Hans Philipp Suschultz, George Erfer, George Welker, Michael Welker, Joost Wyand, Wendell Wyand, and buried nearby is Henry Bornemann. We honor these patriots today, but in a larger sense, we honor all our nation's veterans. President Hilligus will place a wreath in honor of our nation's patriots. Let us be mindful of their service to our nation and reaffirm our faith in the cause of liberty and rededicate ourselves to protecting and preserving this nation they helped to forge, and in thus doing, ensure that their sacrifices were not in vain. I want to thank everyone coming out this morning for this ceremony. As I mentioned at the beginning, we feel that this is a very important part of our history and heritage, and these men buried here deserve to be honored. I would especially like to thank Kim Jacobs, as I mentioned, for helping to facilitate our visit here, and Pastor and Larry for participating. The Honor Guard from the Joint Veterans Council will fire a salute to honor the patriots buried here, followed by taps played by Tim Goebbels of Bugles Across America. Reverend Roth, the benediction, please.
I apologize if that music in the background was a distraction, but the way that timing with the bugler, it almost looked like it was arranged that way. We realize all the more that we are on hallowed ground. Wherever we recognize a history, very, very briefly, back in 1973, just a couple years before our 200th celebration of the Declaration of Independence, I had a farmer plowing the soil so that my wife and I could plant a garden, and I heard this clink. And I said, "Stop the tractor." And I went over and I picked up a coin and I looked at it, and it had King George II on it. Were it not for the American Revolution, that would have been our heritage. Heavenly Father, we believe that you've blessed us. We believe that we have honorably served you. We believe that you are synonymous with freedom for all people, liberty for every human being. So continue to bless this soil, this ground, these people parted and these people living, that they might be a history in the making, in your name. Amen.
Thank you again. Take care. Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. There are refreshments up just outside the church. Bell Garden? Just up in the Bell Garden. Please take advantage of this. The people from the church were generous enough to set this up for us. Thank you.